55 years ago, one of the most historic moments in the world had occurred when Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin stepped foot on the moon in 1969. Last week was the 55th anniversary of the moon landing, and to celebrate that, today's episode has to do with some interesting aliens and space dreams. So today's guest is Doug, and I'm really happy to share his story. Today's episode is really exciting. It's about a dream story that really moved me, and I always try to create a space where people feel comfortable like emailing me and talking about their dream experiences. And so I'm glad you reached out. You sent me your story and I read it, and honestly I was really blown away. And they're regarding the Apollo astronauts. So I'll kind of let you tell the story about how the dreams started that relate to this story. Tell me where it all began.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you for having me on the show. I appreciate it. And I have to preface this by saying I was born like 10 years after the Apollo program ended, and nobody in my family was ever involved in the space program. So I really don't know where any of these dreams or memories or interests have come from. I have no explanation for it. But about 12 years ago, I started having some strange nightmares. So at first, I didn't really think anything of them. But then they started recurring and repeating, and that's when I started to write them down in a little journal. So the first one I started having is a dream I call the shadow figure. So in all these dreams, I guess I'm an astronaut in these dreams, in all of them, and I'm seeing these things unfold either in first-person point of view or in third-person point of view. So in first-person point of view, I'm looking through the visor glass of a space helmet, and I can feel the spacesuit on my body. It's an Apollo spacesuit, which I know because when I see it in third person, you can tell it's an Apollo spacesuit. It's bright white. It seems to be made of like a nylon fabric. There's an American flag sewn into the left sleeve and an Apollo patch sewn into the chest. So there's a lot of details about the suit I can go into later on, I guess, but they're consistent in all the dreams, the spacesuit and the point of views that I see everything from. So the first, go back to the first dream again. The first dream I call is the shadow figure dream, and I'm lying on my back in my spacesuit, and I can't get up. Immediately, I can't get up. I don't know what's holding me down. I don't know why I'm stuck to the floor. I can't really see where I am. Everything's kind of gray. It seems like I'm in some kind of hallway or corridor or something like that. But it's hard to say. It's hard to tell what I'm actually in. Desperately trying to get up. I can't get up. And all of a sudden, I start seeing this shadow emerge. And at first, it's on the ground and it's just past my feet. All of a sudden, I'm just instantly terrified as soon as I see this shadow. And the shadow starts getting bigger and bigger as it starts approaching me. And like I said, at first it's on the floor. But then as it gets closer and closer, it starts rising up the wall. And as it rises up the wall, struck by a couple things. One is that the shadow is extremely dark. It's like almost absorbing the light, if that makes any sense. The other thing I noticed about it is it's not in the shape of like an astronaut or a person wearing a spacesuit. It's definitely like a humanoid type figure, but it's not a human. In other words, can't tell exactly what kind of creature it is, other than that it seems to be bipedal and have two arms and a head. And it keeps getting closer and closer, and it keeps rising up the wall as it's getting closer. And I'm just, I'm desperately trying to get up. In some parts of this dream, I'm experiencing this dream in third person, which means I can actually see the astronaut on the ground. And that's how I can tell it's an Apollo spacesuit. And I can also look into his helmet and see his face. And I can tell it's not my face, which is the weird thing. Like it is a clean shaven white male, but it's not my face. And kind of going off on a little tangent here, but I named the astronaut Dustin. I don't really know why I call him Dustin. I don't think his name has ever been revealed in any of the dreams, but somehow I just came up with that name seemingly out of thin air. It just seems to fit for whatever reason. So if I say Dustin, that's who I'm referring to. So I can see Dustin on the ground in his Apollo spacesuit. He's desperately trying to get up. Sometimes I'm seeing it from third person. Sometimes I'm seeing the stream from the inside of the space helmet. And just as the shadow is completely over me or Dustin in the dream, I wake up. I snap out of it. So I never get to see the actual creature or what was making the shadow. I just got to see the shadow. And I've had this dream a few times. So I've kind of tried to figure out what the shadow is. I don't know if it's the shadow of an alien Or I've also even wondered if the shadow is like demonic, like if it's a demon, which I don't know why a demon and an astronaut would be in the same realm, but it's just something that I've thought of. I've also wondered if the shadow is just representing something, like death. Maybe it's not an actual creature; it's just representative of something. So I don't know. I have a lot of questions and theories about that dream. So the next dream that I had, and I'd like to say that these dreams don't seem to occur in chronological order, which I'll talk a little bit more about, I guess, later when we talk about the book. They just seem to happen just in random points in time during this incident that occurred in space, I guess, if that makes any sense. Anyways, so the second dream I had was, I call it At the Hatch. And so in this dream, I'm back in the white Apollo spacesuit. I'm looking at my hands, which are inside of some white space gloves. I'm looking through the visor glass of the space helmet, and I can't remember if there's any sound in this dream. Some of these dreams, they get kind of blurred together and vague, so some of the details I might be crisscrossing. But at any rate, I know that I'm breathing heavy, and I'm at this hatch on this wall of what I guess is a spacecraft now. So this dream kind of offers that clue. I'm inside of a spacecraft, and I'm at this hatch on this wall. It's like a gray hatch, and all the mechanisms like of the hatch, all the locking mechanisms are exposed, and it looks very intricate. There's like a lever, like a small lever on the hatch that I'm desperately trying to open to unlock this hatch. As soon as the dream starts, I know the creature from the other nightmares is coming up behind me, like he's coming to get me, or Dustin, And I don't know how I know this, because I never see him in this dream, but it's just a paranormal type feeling. I can sense him coming up behind me, and I have to open up this hatch to escape him. So this hatch I'm trying to open, it will not budge. The mechanism seems like it's jammed. I'm trying as hard as I can. I'm also in a very low gravity environment, or zero gravity environment, so I guess I'm in space. And it seems like every time I try to open the hatch, I'm struggling against this hatch, and I keep floating up in the air, like my space boots won't stay on the ground. So that makes it even harder. And my visor glass is starting to fog over because of my heavy breathing, because I'm struggling on this hatch. And the hatch seems like it's welded shut. It also seems like I can't manipulate the controls, because either because I'm in a panic, or because my gloves are too bulky. So eventually I snap out of the dream and I wake up. I don't know if the creature ever gets, or the alien ever gets Dustin. I don't ever find out in this dream. You don't actually see the creature in the dream, but it's still pretty intense, because I know I'm trying to escape the alien or the creature, and it seems like the hatch never opens. So it's pretty scary, and I believe this dream has only ever been in first person. I don't really recall it ever being in third person, so it's entirely from a first person perspective from what I remember. The next one I've had quite a few different dreams, but these are the big three I'm basically talking about. But I'll mention some of the other details of some of their dreams after. But the next one is actually, I don't really consider it a dream. I was laying in my bed, and I was trying to go to sleep, but I wasn't actually asleep yet. I was kind of in that in-between state of about to fall asleep, but not asleep yet. So I don't really know if this is a dream or a memory, or what. I don't really know how to describe what exactly it is. But anyways, I was about to go to sleep. I was laying in my bed, and all of a sudden I'm struck by this memory. I'm Dustin in the dream again, in the spacesuit again, but I'm looking at another astronaut, and he's also in a Apollo spacesuit. But this astronaut is on his back on some kind of like surgical table or operating table, and he's desperately trying to get up, but he can't, because he's being sucked down to this table somehow. And I'll come back to that in a minute. But the room, let me describe the room real quick. The room is really obscure again. It's kind of like the first dream, where I can't really see too much detail about where I'm at. But the room is like a foggy gray color. But in the background, I hear this, both of us, me and the other astronaut, hear this pneumatic drill sound. And it's very intense. It sounds like a dentist drill, like if you're at the dentist's office and you're getting a cleaning, and you hear somebody in the next room over getting a root canal or something like that, and you hear the pneumatic sound of the drill. That's kind of what the sound was like, except it was much louder than that, much more intense in the dream. And both of us somehow knew that the drill was about to be used on the astronaut that's laying on the table, or both of us. And so we're both in a total panic with this drill going on. He's trying to get up off the table, and I'm just observing all this. I don't really know what I'm doing or what Dustin's doing, but the table that he's on, it's some kind of like, it's like a weird surgical table or operating table, but it's about 3 or 4 inches thick. It's like this weird tan color, and it's got these dime-sized or quarter-sized holes in it. I think the table was generating like a vacuum type force through these holes that was causing the astronaut on the table to be sucked down to it, because he's on his back. He's desperately trying to get up off this table, and he can't. And so this drill sound is still going in the background. And then all of a sudden, I snap out of the dream, and I don't ever remember, or I don't ever get to see what happened next. And like I said, I keep calling it a dream, but I don't know. I really don't know what to call it, because, like I said, I wasn't fully asleep yet. And that memory or dream, it only seemed to last a few seconds, whereas the other dreams seemed to last, a few minutes. This one was very quick. It was almost like a miniature flashback, if that makes any kind of sense. Some of the other dreams, I don't really remember very much. Sometimes I have this like I'll have a dream and I'll wake up, and then like I won't really remember much about it other than there were astronauts in the dream, or something like that. I do recall in one of the dreams, I don't remember what exactly happened, but I remember the alien in the dream was dark gray. He was very large, very muscular. He was not your typical alien. I know we're talking about aliens here, so nobody really knows, right? But like typically people describe aliens as being kind of smaller, 4 feet tall, thin, with big black eyes. And these aliens in these dreams were not small. They were very large, probably 7 feet or so. And like I said, very muscular, not like bodybuilder muscular, but kind of like a basketball player, like athletic muscles. So I don't really know. I don't know much about aliens as far as the different types of aliens, or some people claim to know what planets they come from and what the different types are, what their intentions are. I don't really know all that. I just know what I've experienced in my dreams and nightmares, and these were little memories that I've had.
That is really intense, and it's cool. Definitely, we can have similar dreams and flashbacks like you're mentioning, and that kind of in-between phase is called hypnagogia, and we can still have interesting dreams there. But these definitely feel like more than just dreams. It's more than just, oh, I'm really interested in space, and so I'm thinking about it while I'm sleeping. This is definitely deep. So how did you start to make sense of these dreams? I can imagine that's very traumatizing and stressful to wake up after something like that. And I know you started to Google things and research about space and all of that, but what was your first reaction and how did you process these experiences?
First reaction I had was, I thought the first one was sleep paralysis, because I was on my back and couldn't get up, and this creature's approaching me, and it sounds very much like a sleep paralysis type situation. And I have sleep paralysis from time to time, so it is quite intense. So I thought that's what it was at first. And then as I started having other dreams that were similar, always the same theme is I'm in a white Apollo spacesuit all the time, every dream. And it seems like I'm in space or some kind of spacecraft. So that's always a common theme. And there's always a creature. So then it was like pieces to a puzzle. That's kind of how I look at all this. And so I started writing them down or typing them out in a dream journal that I have, just to kind of keep track of them. Every now and then if I have something, I'll note it in there. Like if I have another dream or whatever. I haven't had one in a while. The last one was that memory recall thing I was talking about. That was about 4 months ago now. That was the very last one that I've had. But yeah, so I started writing things down in a journal and kind of seeing the patterns. I decided to write a book about it, a fictional book based off of the dreams. And what I did with the book was I started putting these things in kind of chronological order. Because I think all this is from the same incident. I don't think they're just random different incidents. I think it's all the same incident, like little snapshots of the same event. So I started trying to figure out, well, what would the order be? And so I started kind of trying to put those together in order, and I came up with a fictional story, quote unquote. And I did add in some details, that I had to create some stuff to make it flow and add different characters, and I had to do a little bit of research on some of the historical elements of the story. So that's also in there as well. But writing the story really helped me put it together and figure some of it out, at least. I still don't know what it means, who these astronauts were, if they were actually real. I have to throw the disclaimer out there that this could all just be my wild imagination, coming to me in dream format. So there's always that possibility as well.
Yeah, I love it. And the story is really great. I will link it because I really want people to read it. And you're a great writer too. And I love how it just flowed through you so naturally, as if you're really accessing the memories of somebody that lived. And like you said, maybe it's just your crazy imagination, but if that's true, it's a hell of a story with a lot of details and things that surprisingly add up to things that actually happened as well. But what really fascinates me too, before we get deeper into the book, which I do want to talk about, there's so many details to unpack here. Before the dreams even started, you grew up with interest in space before Google was even a thing. So can you take me back to like your childhood interests and what sort of connections you've noticed to this story before you started having the dreams?
Sure. I was born in the early 80s. Like you said, there wasn't really any internet back then. I don't even think I had a computer in my house till I was in my teenage years. So I don't know the exact age, but around 5 or 7, somewhere in that age range, I started having a interest in space. And I know a lot of boys and girls, want to be astronauts and dream about space and all this other stuff. But mine was a little bit more intense than that. I started drawing detailed diagrams of multi-stage rockets, which are basically rockets that, as they fly through the air or fly into space, they separate into different stages, and the other U stages fall back to Earth, usually with parachutes, and they're reusable. So I started drawing detailed diagrams of these multi-stage rockets and spacecraft and other things. And then as I got a little bit older, I'm still just a little kid, less than 10 years old. I started making rockets out of cardboard and construction paper and plastic bottles. And, I got my mom's hot glue gun and started gluing all this stuff together and started producing these rockets that were usually, a few feet tall. I packed firecrackers or fireworks into the bottom of one of them. And we lived on a cul-de-sac, and went out there one day and tried to, I was thinking the fireworks would blast it off, and ended up blowing up in the cul-de-sac there. But yeah, I was doing that kind of stuff as a little kid. I later found out that the rocket that I was drawing and building was the Saturn V, which was used during the Apollo program. And if you ever get a chance, there's a space museum in Huntsville, Alabama. It's called the U.S. Space and Rocket Center. And hanging from the ceiling in the Apollo building is a Saturn V rocket, and it's separated out to its multiple stages. It's really cool to see. So anyways, that's what I was building as a little kid. So my grandfather, he died before I was born, but he was a Marine in World War II. So I kind of lost interest in the space stuff, and I started gaining interest in the military. So when I got out of high school, I went into Marines, and I was in the military for a while, and I was also in law enforcement for a while. So I kind of forgot about all the space stuff and had lived this whole other life that didn't have anything to do with space. So then about 12 years ago is when I started having the dreams. And so it was separated by, many, decades of just living as a Marine and as a police officer, and also work construction, done all these other things. So it's not like I was constantly, researching space stuff and then had these dreams. It came many, many, many years later. So that's kind of how my life story goes with all this.
Yeah, interesting. And I was also wondering, when the dreams happened later in your adult life, what do you think triggered it? Like, do you think there was anything going on in your life, maybe a spiritual awakening or anything, do you think, that made this start happen?
No, not really. I was living on a farm actually 12 years ago. My wife and I bought a homestead, and we started farming out there and living out in the middle of nowhere. I've never been a big TV watcher. If I do watch TV, it's a documentary or something like that. I like war movies and stuff like that. So I don't really watch much sci-fi or space stuff. So yeah, there was really nothing that seemed to trigger any of this. I had another weird dream, and I don't know if this is related. I don't even know what it was. And my son, oddly enough, had the same dream. And I don't know if this is related, but I'm going to go ahead and tell it to you. This was in the house I'm living at now, not on the farm anymore. This was about 2 or 3 years ago. I was in my bed. I was laying on my back, and I had just fallen asleep. So I was in bed. My wife was still watching TV in the TV room. So I was completely sealed off in the bedroom. Door was shut. All of a sudden, this bright white light. I mean, it's bright. I thought it was like a spotlight in my face. Started shining in my eyes. So I don't know if I'm dreaming this or if I actually woke up and this actually happened. I couldn't tell you. but it was super, super realistic if it was a dream. But this bright white light is all of a sudden shining in my eyes. It's almost blinding. It's so bright. And my first thought was my wife was messing with me. She's shining a flashlight in my face for some reason. And so I wake up, or I think I'm awake, and all of a sudden there's this cantaloupe-sized or softball-sized bright white orb in front of my face, like 4 or 5 inches from my face. And I know I probably sound Looney Tunes right now, but I'm just telling my story. So this orb, it almost seems to communicate with me telepathically. It doesn't really speak to me in like English or nothing, but like I just get the sense in my head. It's like saying like, "Hey, I'm bored. I'm just wanting to mess with you for entertainment." And as soon as it says that to me, it goes across the room and it flies into the wall and it kind of dematerializes in the wall and it vanishes. And like I said, I know I sound crazy, but this may have been just a dream, but this is the next part of the story. So, like I said, I'm a Marine and former law enforcement. So like I kind of rationalize things very quickly. So I rationalize it. Hey, this is just a dream. And that's that. I don't know, about 4 or 6 months later, my wife and I are sitting in the TV room watching TV, and the stairwell leads up directly from the TV room, and my son's bedroom is right at the top of the stairs. And my son's he was about maybe 5 or 6 at the time. I think he was 5. And all of a sudden we hear him just screaming and crying. So, and this is at night, so he's in bed. So we run up there and get with him in his bed and ask him, "Hey, what's going on?" And he said, "I had a nightmare." And I was like, "Oh, okay, man. Tell me about it." And he said, "Well, there was this bright light all of a sudden, and it was in my face, and I woke up, and it was like a ball of light in front of my face. And then as soon as I saw it, it flew across the room and disappeared into the wall." And I was like, "Holy crap!" Like, because I did not tell anybody. Well, I told my wife about the dream, but I did not tell my sons. She didn't tell anybody. And it was like almost verbatim what I had seen. So I don't know how to explain that, but wow. And I know that's like way off it was super strange. Like, I don't know what to make of that. Especially since my son described the same thing.
Yeah, you're not crazy. Don't tell yourself that. Like, there's so much we don't know about the world.
Yeah. Well, that was another thing that I forgot about it. I didn't think to mention that before. I don't know if somebody that has passed away is trying to, for some reason, has chosen me to tell these stories or to talk to me about them. I don't know. Like I said, I'm usually a pretty grounded, down to earth person, but all this stuff is bizarre and I don't know what to make of it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's very possible that you're telling somebody's story or that this is a past life that you've lived. Both could be possible depending on, what you believe. But the unique different points of view of these dreams throughout the years fascinates me a lot. And the way that it allows you to put together the story. But these are more than just dreams. Like, you feel personally connected to one astronaut, Dustin in particular, right? And you're kind of seeing all of this unfold through his eyes and in different ways. So do you feel like a personal connection to him rather deeper than just watching a scene play out like a movie?
In a way, yes. I feel like me and Dustin, like if I was standing in a room with Dustin, I feel like me and him would be very like almost polar opposites. I'm a military man, hard charging kind of guy. And I feel like Dustin was kind of more the scientific kind of guy. I picture him as a thinner guy. For some reason, this is all in my mind's eye. So I'm just explaining to you what I'm visualizing. Probably really good guy, scientific type guy, super smart, and just an astronaut who was trying to explore space or just live that kind of lifestyle. That's very different from mine. I feel connected to him in the way that I feel like I've been tasked with this story of just trying to get this story out there. I don't know exactly what happened to him, if this whole thing has really happened, but the fictional story that I wrote, the details just seemed to flow out of me as I typed out the story. It's like I almost know all this stuff. And then the spacesuit, going back to the spacesuit, like to me that's kind of like a very personalized piece of gear that an astronaut would have, kind of like a Marine's rifle or a Marine's helmet or uniform, something that you have and hold every day as part of your job. And so the spacesuit for him would have been the same, something that he wears in space, has to take care of, and it has to take care of him. Literally his lifeline out in space. In these dreams, like I could feel the spacesuit on my body, like against my skin. It felt like I was in like a sleeping bag, if that makes any sense. It was bulky but comfortable. I kind of almost like I feel like what his life was like in those last few moments, I guess. So, yeah.
Yeah, those are such vivid memories, and that's such a unique feeling to really remember what that spacesuit feels like. That's not something that a lot of people can say that they really know what it's like. I want to dive into some of these characters here in your story, and then we'll get into the history of what's actually going on with the space missions and things. But there's some really interesting characters here. You have the 3 astronaut crew, which, as you mentioned, some of them are from the dream and some of them are kind of things you've pieced together, which turn out to be quite interestingly accurate. But then you have these government type personalities, particularly this one Agent X. Does this Agent X ever appear in the dream, or is it just kind of part of the story that fits in?
No, Agent X never appears in any of the dreams. I took the most creative freedoms with chapter 1, I'll say. It's pretty much entirely just, I just wrote it from imagination, basically. Agent X, there's a couple reasons why I created her character. One, I wanted somebody to represent the corruption of the government. I wanted to put that corruption into a person. She represents how the government feels like people are expendable. If people die to accomplish an objective, it doesn't matter. She kind of represents the deception of the government, the cover-ups. She's all of that in one person. The other reason why I wanted Agent X is because I wanted her character to kind of be the polar opposite of Kaylee's character, who's the spacecraft pilot. I wanted kind of a sharp contrast between the astronauts and the government. They're actually polar opposite characters in the book. So that's why I put her character in there, and as well as the other agents that are there. And I'm planning on eventually writing a sequel to this book, and it'll go more into Agent X's background and who she is and where she comes from, and it'll be a lot more about her. In the first book, she's kind of a mystery still. She's one of the kind of the people pulling the strings, so to speak.
Yeah, wow, I'm excited for when that comes out because I'm really curious about learning more about this character from your perspective. And it really makes sense, that they want to figure out more about the moon at all costs, regardless of who it affects. So they send out these 3 astronauts, and I love the moment in your book where they all find out that the only thing they have in common is that they're all not close with their families. They don't have anybody that would go looking for them. And, it's interesting because when you start lining up your story with a lot of conspiracy theories out there or stories out there about what happened really with these moon missions, there's some theories that, we went to the moon and were told by some aliens not to come back. And maybe we got a really gruesome warning where these astronauts in these secret missions were killed, like in your story. And why would such a government continue to send more people to the moon, knowing that we're not supposed to return and that the other astronauts were dead? I mean, they want to learn more about the moon. They want to be territorial against a species that's clearly stronger and more advanced than us. So it really is quite cruel. It almost seems to me that Agent X is more cruel than the aliens that, supposedly made a lesson out of the astronauts.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree 100%. And something else too. I'm not really a conspiracy theorist or a tinfoil hat wearing kind of guy, but it always was kind of odd to me that we stopped going to the moon so abruptly with Apollo 17. And when you do the research on why, the reason that's given by the government is that we quit going to the moon because of budget cuts. And as I've mentioned, when has the government cared about taxpayer dollars? When have they cared about wasting our money? We're just an ATM machine to them. So, why would they be worried about the budget, or wasting money on the space program? It just doesn't make much sense. When there's so much more of the moon that could have been explored, we don't know what kind of resources are on the moon, if there's valuable minerals, if there's stuff that we could use here on Earth. We don't know, because we stopped going, apparently. So I've always thought that was kind of strange,
Yeah, not to mention they want to explore it, and we know they have a crazy amount of money, and they're not afraid to get into more debt. So I don't know if I believe the whole budget cut story either.
Exactly. The only thing that'd be hard to do, which this is kind of playing a devil's advocate here. In the 60s and 70s, the technology to go to the moon required a massive rocket, the Saturn V. I think it was the most powerful rocket we've ever built. It was a massive machine. And to launch one of those off to send astronauts to the moon, if you're going to do that in secret, that'd be pretty hard to do because it's a colossal machine. There's got to be a lot of people involved, and people are going to know. It's going to wake the neighbors when it goes off, So So that's the only thing that I wonder about. Like, if we went back secretly, how would they pull it off? I'm not saying it's impossible, but I'm just saying it'd be one of the hardest things. There was another program that kind of piggybacked off the Apollo program. It was called the Skylab program, and the Skylab program was basically a lab in space. It was kind of a small space station that orbited the Earth. The astronauts went up there, and they spent certain periods of time up there conducting experiments, and they used the same exact Apollo A7L spacesuits that the astronauts on the moon used. So that's also interesting. I'm just talking out loud here, don't throwing darts at a dartboard, but they could have said, "Hey, we're going to Skylab," and really went back to the moon. So that's also possible, I guess. But like I said, that's kind of a conspiracy theory.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of possibilities, honestly. And the truth is, all these theories come about because we really don't know what's going on. And we do know that the government, hides things from us, and they want to control this narrative that, oh, these aliens, that's crazy talk, and that's why movies come out and jokes and memes about it. But we know that they have an interest in studying this thing, so they're going to do it. They want to get ahead of the narrative before the public freaks out or anything. But let's talk about what we do know. I mean, now things are coming out. They've already admitted to lying about aliens, and we're starting to figure out some things that were kept about Neil Armstrong and the Apollo missions. So when you started to research these things and kind of compare the facts while putting together your book, what did you learn about what's going on? These black budget programs, like what else makes you curious about what's really happening?
So Neil Armstrong, as everybody knows, was the first astronaut on the moon. And actually, I think July 21st is going to be the 55th moon landing anniversary. There's been some rumors or leaked footage, whatever you want to call it, that when he was on the moon, he saw a UFO and or aliens. It's not exactly clear exactly what he saw, but there was the channel that he was talking to us. When he landed on the moon, it was videotaped. It was on TV. He was talking. You can hear him say, "One small step for man," and all that. But then when he saw these UFOs or spaceships or whatever, he switched to a private channel. They called it a medical channel. So in other words, if he was having like a medical problem or low oxygen or something, he could switch his channel and communicate back with, Houston, Mission Control in Houston privately. Apparently he switches to his channel and says something like, "They're here and they're watching us," referring to the aliens on the moon. I don't know how exactly that leaked out. I don't remember exactly where I read it at or saw it at, but I've seen it a couple times. And I have another quote somewhere from him that was similar to that. And all this is unverified. I can't say it's all true or accurate, but this is just some of the stuff I've been seeing and reading. And it's out there if anybody wants to Google it. But also, I think it was Apollo 17, which was the last manned mission to the moon, allegedly, of course. They got back in their lunar lander and they took off from the moon. And they linked back up with the command module. And when they did so, after they got back into command module, they basically jettisoned the lunar lander off the command module and shot it back down into the moon, basically, and to see what would happen when it collided with the moon. So when it collided with the moon, it caused the moon to ring like a bell, which was indicating that it was hollow. And some of the articles I've been reading about that claim that the moon rang like a bell for 30 minutes. So I don't really know what they mean by ring like a bell exactly, because sound can't travel through space. So I don't know if they mean that they had like some kind of sensors that were able to pick up the vibration from the moon, or if they left sensors behind on the moon that could pick up the sound, or I'm not exactly sure how they knew that, but there are articles out there about that. And then there's another story about one of the Apollo missions that orbited around the dark side of the moon, the backside of the moon. And so when astronauts go around the backside of the moon, they can't receive radio transmissions from Earth because the moon blocks the radio waves out. So they're basically radio silent for however long it takes them to get around the moon on the backside. So while they're around on the backside, they started hearing strange music playing over their radio. And it's not like a radio in the car. It's like a communication radio, of course, we're talking about. So where's the music coming from? Like, if they're supposed to be radio silent, where's it coming from? So all this stuff I've been finding out through my research. And then I don't really know much about the black budget programs that do exist. There's programs out there that we don't know where the money goes. There's documents that are all blacked out. Like, that's why they call them black budget programs, because you go to research the paper trail and everything will be blacked out with a black marker. It'll say the date on the paper and maybe a little bit of letterhead, and then the rest of the whole document will be blacked out with like maybe a word or two at the bottom. So that's the government for it. They won't tell us where that money goes. But apparently there's been a lot of movies made about the Men in Black, a lot of goofy movies, but a lot of people claim they're real people, which is kind of what Agent X is in my book. It kind of alludes to her being a part of that organization. A lot of people have had like alien encounters or close encounters with alien craft. A lot of them claim to, a day or two later, or even hours later, get a strange visit by 2 or 3 usually large men in black uniforms or black suits. And they never say who exactly they work for, but they show up and they ask strange questions. And some of these people that have these encounters, like, they haven't even had a chance to tell anybody yet. Like, it just happened. And they're so freaked out about it that they decide not to tell anybody about it because people are going to think they're crazy. But then these Men in Black show up, and how they know that they had an encounter. They didn't tell anybody yet. So that's kind of a weird consistency I found with the Men in Black. They just seem to just show up out of nowhere. But they show up, they ask a lot of questions like, what'd you see? Where were you? Like, did you touch it? Did you tell anybody? Did you take any pictures? Like, that kind of stuff. And then some people even say that the Men in Black threaten them, like, don't tell anybody about this. If you care about your family or you care about yourself or you care about not losing your job, you won't tell anybody. And then they just leave just like they came. They left just without a trace, But I'm not really into aliens or conspiracy theories or nothing. All this research I've done is just based off of the dreams. It's not stuff that I've been into for my whole life. It's just basically in reference to all the dreams and experiences I've had, trying to get some background information on it.
Yeah, definitely. Another element that I wanted to mention that really stood out to me was in the book, you talk about this taxidermy metaphor, like these aliens, they pin up these human bodies with a display, little badge and everything. Like, they're so proud of this hunt this prey they just killed and whatnot. And it sounds so terrible and gruesome. But then I'm like, we do that to deers and, whatever hunters do, they put it up above their mantle. So it's quite funny when you think about it that way. It's like normal to us, but when we're the victims of it, it's so gruesome. Do you think that maybe it's just normal to aliens to treat us that way? And do you think there are aliens that maybe believe in us a little bit more and support us? Do you think that's a possibility?
Definitely possible. Some people say that there's good aliens and bad aliens. Like, I guess, like people, sometimes there's good people, sometimes there's bad people. So I guess maybe, I don't know if it's an advanced civilization thing. Human beings are supposed to be the advanced, but most intelligent known species on this planet. But yet we've conducted so many experiments with animals, in the name of science. Some of them were very cruel experiments. We've killed millions of animals in our experiments, just trying to figure out, medical technology and all that stuff. And so the question is, would a more advanced species than us do the same thing because they're more advanced than us and they can, they have the power to do so. It's possible. It's scary, but it's possible. But then on the other end of the spectrum, I've also heard that, and this is, again, like just research I've done, not saying any of this is true, but I'm just saying this is what I've read about and seen. Some people claim that they've been abducted, and before they were abducted, they were having extreme medical problems like cancer and other things, and that after they got abducted, miraculously the cancer was gone, and which was verified by a doctor afterwards. Like, I think one guy said he had like tuberculosis or lung cancer or something, and the scan at his doctor showed nothing but black in his lungs, and he was, basically terminal. And then he got abducted, and then he came back and he wasn't coughing anymore, didn't have any problems. So he went to the doctor, and the doctor did another scan on him and found his lungs were perfectly clear. So, and I've heard a lot of stories like that. So it could probably go both ways, and it goes back to the thing, like, some people think there's different types of aliens, and some are good and some are bad. So, honestly, I don't have the answers, and I don't think anybody really does, but it's interesting to think about.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, your story made me think about a lot, honestly. And, I respect you for not being biased. You're not one way or the other with any of these theories. You're just kind of like, hey, this is my dream. This is what happened to me. This is what I've learned. Do what you want with this information. And I think that's really cool. And just going back to the book a little bit, I love how it just flowed out of you. You just wrote this book up so quickly. And I really want everybody to read it. It's such a good read. It took me like an hour or so to read. So it's not too long or anything. But how are you feeling now that you put it out there? Do you feel like it represents your dream? And do you feel like you're doing a good job at honoring the story?
Yeah, I think it's good. I feel better. I still kind of am, but I was very consumed by this whole thing. It took up a lot of my thought. I was getting distracted at work and just getting distracted in general. I was just constantly thinking about this, and I still do. And so like getting feedback from people, and even if it's negative feedback, just any kind of feedback, is always good. I like to hear people's thoughts and theories. This one lady had an interesting theory that I was the shadow creature. Like I was actually the alien or shadow creature in the dream. Like I was actually I don't know, what do you call it, an antagonist or something, the villain basically. So yeah, so that was an interesting theory I never thought about. Like what if I was the bad guy in the dream, So yeah, it's kind of interesting to get the feedback, and it's good. It helps me out, try to put some of the clues together, because I don't have the answers. Obviously, I'm just kind of the messenger. So like maybe somebody out there knows more about this than I do. When they reach out to me and tell me what they think, it helps me out a lot. It makes me see things from a different perspective, or sometimes it makes me research something that I didn't think about before. Yeah, it's all been pretty positive.
Yeah, that's good. You're putting your story out there, and people can, do their own research regarding what curiosities they get from it. And is there anything else that you're still curious about with these dreams? Anything else that you still want to learn, or that's still developing for you?
I still feel like I'm missing some of the puzzle pieces. Like, or even though I wrote the story and it flowed out of me, like some of the elements of the story I haven't had in a dream yet. So like, I would like to have those dreams, believe it or not, even though they're nightmares, I'd still like to have them just so I could like get some closure and see what may have happened. Obviously, I'd like to know what these shadows and beings were in the dreams, what they represent or what they are. I'd really like to know their intentions. Obviously, there were bad intentions, but why were their intentions bad? Like, what caused them to do these evil things? Or maybe they don't see it as evil. Maybe they see us as evil, So that's something else I kind of mentioned in the story. There's a quote in there that one of the aliens says telepathically, and he tells why he's about to do what he's doing. I won't give it away, but it kind of aligns with what I'm trying to say here. But yeah, I have so many questions still, like who were these beings? What were their intentions? Did this really happen? Was it part of the Apollo program? Was it Skylab? Because like I said, Skylab was pretty similar to the Apollo program as far as the suits and the time frame. So yeah, I have a lot of questions still.
Yeah, well, if any more dreams pop up that unravel any more clues, you have to keep me posted, because I'm invested in the story now.
I definitely will. If anybody's curious about the book, it's only like 13,000 words. It's actually more of a short story than a book. I call it a book because it's divided into chapters. It is a quick read if you're interested.
I love that. And I just want to end off with this quote that you said in your email when we were kind of going over the questions. And I really love it. I think it encompasses this whole thing really well. It's like giving medicine to a toddler. If you give them the raw medicine, they won't take it. But if you mix it with honey, they'll love it without realizing it's actually medicine. And I think that's so applicable here. That's such a good metaphor, because we're slipping people a little bit of truth here, and they can kind of uncover the truth however works for them.
Exactly. And even if this didn't happen, like if it's just my imagination, it doesn't change the fact that the government is still very corrupt. There's still been a lot of black budget programs. And I'm reading Bob Lazar's book right now. He was a physicist that worked for the government at Area 51 and S4. And ironically, the book is called Dreamland. And he was basically the original whistleblower that came out and said, hey, the government's experimenting with alien craft at Area 51 and S4. I also highly recommend, people who are interested in the subject, check that book out. But it's basically about what I'm talking about here is, the government tries to hide stuff from us, and there's stuff going on that they lie to us about, that they say that there's not, this technology doesn't exist, but clearly it does. We just had these classified, the government basically came out with these congressional hearings, for over the past 2 years saying that, UFOs are real. We don't know what they are. They had pilots, F-18 pilots testify in these congressional hearings, and all kinds of different people working for the government testified. And so, yeah, even if Dustin wasn't a real astronaut, none of this stuff happened, it's still based on true things that have happened in the government, because like I said, they lie to us all the time, and they treat people like they're expendable. So, yeah, I think it's pretty accurate. So
Yeah. It's a good representation, even if it's fictional, of just things that are going on. And we already know we're not the only beings in the universe, so that's no secret for sure.
Right.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. This has been really great. It's been fun following along with your story, and I'm excited to see how it continues to unfold. I'll be looking out for the next book.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, and I enjoyed being on your show.